Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. I am John Najarian. Pete and I are going to break down the CPI, Consumer Price Index, which came out this morning and was a little hotter than expected. We'll give you the 411 on that and a lot more on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang!
That's official. Here we go. We got a lot to cover, John. Holy smoly. A lot of data.
Yeah. And let's dive right into the data, Pete. Macro minute, CPI came in hotter than expected. A lot of people thought it might beat to the downside, but instead it's still hot at 3.2%. Keep in mind, the Fed, 3.3%, I'm sorry. They wanted it to be 3.2 or lower. And that's still a far cry from 2, Pete. Overall, it seems like beef, butter, eggs. Oh, yeah, who needs that stuff? But that stuff is all up like 4 times what the rate of inflation is, or 2 times, or 3 times, or more. There's a whole bunch of things that are up much bigger than expected, and that's why we started to the downside this morning.
Yep, a little bit of pressure on the markets, John, although we might have had pressure regardless because we had a monster day yesterday with the Dow up over 400 points and, you know, pretty substantial move from all of the major indices yesterday. A really nice move to the upside. That being said, CPI definitely throws a little bit of cold water on things. And then you've got PPI tomorrow. So we've got all this data that we're going to be digesting, and I've never been around a market anything like what we have right now, John, because right now, everything is about the data. And nobody's even talking about, by the way, tomorrow we kick off earnings season, by the way. We got not Goldman Sachs, but we got JP Morgan. I mean, we've got all the biggies lined up with Wells Fargo. We got Bank of New York Mellon. I mean, it's going to be a kickoff of everything over the next few weeks. And yet all of the data is what everybody's focused on right now. And maybe they should be, but I think you'll want to look at the earnings as well.
For instance, folks, where inflation is, well, auto insurance, I needn't tell you, is up 16%. I've got rent up 4.8%, housing up 4.1%, earnings up 4%, education up 3.6%. What's not up? Well, thankfully, gasoline, it's only down. Rental cars, down. Used vehicles, down. Now, the used vehicle side might not be good unless you're a buyer of a used vehicle, because if you own that vehicle and are trying to sell it, it's worth about 5% less, according to the charts, Pete. All right. How about fantastic futures? Are you going to go with the VIX today, Pete?
Yeah, I was going to go with the VIX, John. I mean, you know, it's been dead on everything that we've talked about as far as what the VIX really means and what those numbers really mean. How do you interpret them? It's been exactly right. We had that big move yesterday, but we also get that down move, and we've had this back and forth and back and forth. So it does make sense that we're well above that 16 level. Again, we'll say we're at somewhere between 19 and 21. I know we've been a little bit higher than that, but it doesn't last very, very long, John. So I would say keep an eye on the volatility index for anything movement-wise that goes north of 22, which we're not really seeing a whole lot of that for any length of time, or something that would go beneath 19. But I'd say 19 to 21 is a very fair level of where we are based upon the movement we're getting in the market.
Yeah, and it certainly seems that we're concerned about the Middle East, of course, and what might be going on in the near future. We hope it does not, of course, result in an out-and-out war between Israel and Iran. But the posturing alone is what lifted crude oil, and it's lifting it again today, Pete. I'm going to say my fantastic future, not so fantastic for us unless you're long crude, is crude oil. A 3% jump in crude oil, taking it up over 75.50 again, Pete. So that's something that you don't want to see, especially if you'd like to see maybe the chance of something more than a 25 basis point cut November 6th. All right, folks. We are happy to have Serve Robotics. They are formerly Miso Robotics. Now they're known as Serve Robotics, and they are doing a crowd fund right now. So when you take a look at this one, we are working with them. So this is a paid commercial, but look at this thing, Pete. That is Flippy. And what it's doing right there, it's taking the fries. You know, again, people aren't real happy to be sitting there slaving over a fryer all day. But there's Rich Hull, the CEO, talking about, you know, at $22 an hour, Flippy is killing it. It's just doing a great job for the fast food companies that employ it. And they've also got a burger flipping machine. They've also got a soft drink filling machine. And it's not just to cut workers out of that, folks. It is so that the Serve Robotics company can provide a better experience for the buyer of that fast food, for instance. They don't just do fast food. But for instance, if you see, 10 cars in line, you might say, heck with it. I'm not going to sit there and wait for that. Well, if everything comes up at the same time, if your burger's still warm, the fries are still warm, the drink all comes up at the same time because the robot doing it, that's a very positive thing. Not to mention the idea that $22 an hour was really killing a lot of those fast food companies, Pete. And as I said, it doesn't just work with fast food. They have some really big national brands on the steak side that are steakhouses that use this as well, because it can scan that piece of meat, know how thick it is, know how long it has to go on that 600 or 800 degree grill to make sure that it comes out the way it was ordered. Medium rare, whatever. This can virtually do it right every time. So I hope that you get a chance to check out Miso and or Serve Robotics, folks, because they do great things and they're doing a crowd fund right now. And we're pretty proud to be part of their crowd fund again, because we've helped raise money for them in the past. And now they're expanding like crazy. So enough said. Pete, let's dive into stocks, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, GXO. Now, a former CTO of ours at the former Trade Monster, he went over to XPO Logistics, Pete. And XPO Logistics did fabulous. That stock exploded to the upside, maybe because of some of the things that our guy did. But then they spun off this GXO from XPO. I know that's a lot of acronyms there, folks. But now they may be exploring a sale, and that's why this stock was just, boom, popping to the upside, Pete.
Yeah, it's had an absolutely unbelievable move to the upside, John. It was up as much as 15%. Last I looked, it's up. It was trading $17 higher at 58. I mean, it's at $7 higher, at 58. Really nice move. $6 billion market cap. This is going to be a big chunk, but they're evaluating right now, John, some of the offers that are out there. You know what that also tells me? There might be a good chance that they're actually tapping on some of those investment bankers out there that are going to maybe try to help piece things together in some way. Either way, they've got an amazing amount of volume coming in today. There's no doubt about that. As you mentioned, spin-off of XPO. This is going to be really interesting. They have earnings out not too far away as well, so throw that in there, November 5th. But there's a lot to look at this one. It's not at the absolute top. 63 was the 52-week high, but it's not that far away. And as we saw the other day, sometimes they throw out numbers and they go even above those numbers. So I wouldn't be surprised if this would be the case in this particular stock as well. And there's definitely something going on. We already know that, but will they actually execute it on it? That's what we don't know.
Right. Well, you already said, Pete, JP Morgan kicks off earnings season really for the S&P 500 in a big way tomorrow. And another big bank, Toronto Dominion Bank, TD is the acronym. They in pre-market trading, they're the biggest bank in Canada, I believe, Pete, and they had some troubles, and they're being examined for those troubles. Well, they're facing a $3 billion penalty, and you know what? We had put activity. That's right, folks, put activity, unusual put buys, and there you see it on your screen. As you know, Pete and I tend to buy the at-the-money puts or the at-the-money calls, depending which one. This was a clear bet that they were going to have a problem in the future, which they had, and the stock traded down to 58.5 this morning, Pete. So a nice win for our subscribers that were part of this one, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. That part of it's great. What's not great for TD is the fact that they've got $3 billion in penalties that are coming their way, which is very, it could limit some of the growth and all of that. These are really serious charges that are being brought against them. They plead guilty with the CEO now stepping down in April of 2025. This is a lot of news to digest right now. That's why the stock is down. I'm actually a little surprised, John, it's only down what it is, about 4 or 5%, because given the backdrop of what you and I are just talking about the news of the day, I would have almost expected it to be even further down. Nonetheless, those puts were moving, and that's a good thing because we did have that unusual option activity that kind of gave us sniffed out something was going on there over at TD, and apparently this was it.
Yeah, well, that's why we follow unusual activity, folks, because we know that there are always people that know more about something about to go on. Sometimes they're insiders in the government, that they're making laws and passing bills that become laws after they're signed into law by the president. Other times, there are regulations that, again, are working through Congress and so forth. Sometimes also, people do bad things. They trade on insider information. We don't know that. We don't do that. But we follow what has occurred in the markets. Mm-hmm. That's why Pete and I have been following unusual activity for now 25 years. Since 1999, we've been doing it, folks. Mm-hmm. And it has found some massive wins for us. And I'd encourage all of you to check out marketrebellion.com/get started for more.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in, Pete, to another category here. Let's take a look at ADMA. They engage in manufacturing specialty plasma-delivered biologics. Now, that's a mouthful, but obviously they have good news and bad news. Now, they did have good news. I'll let Pete share that. I'll be the bringer of bad news. The bad news was their quarterly financial results were impacted by a one-time accrual. Now, the one-time accrual, that's the good news. But the bad news about it is it's a one-time accrual. So they're not going to get this big windfall again. So that's the bad news. In other words, guiding going forward, they had to say, well, we're not going to get that again. So our guidance going forward isn't as bullish as many of you would think for just looking at our numbers.
Well, and this is one of the big alarming parts of this, John, was when they said, well, the company auditor unexpectedly resigned. That's probably not a good thing. I'm just throwing that out there. But You said, where are the positives? Here's the positives. Revenue was up 78% year over year. The EBITDA up 600% year over year. Gross profits up 244% year over year. These are year over year numbers. Those are massive beats. And like you said, John, are they going to do that again? Unlikely, so we'll have to see how things go. But they do have some shorts in there. There's about 7%, not huge, but this will be very interesting to see if they're able to make a turn. I don't like any time I hear anything about the auditors and resigning and a CEO or a CFO or anybody in the C-suite. That's always something where you just kind of scratch your head and go, oh, wait a minute now, why and what happened and all the rest of it. Well, we know that it's an unexpected resignation. Well, that's probably not something good. So I would say this is a no touch for now. I love the numbers they put up, but I don't know that they're going to be putting up those kind of numbers ever again.
Yeah. Well, on a better note, folks, to leave you on a high note, EVGO. So EVGO, I guess you know what they do. I mean, it's an EV charging infrastructure company. That's pretty easy. Now, what they've done here is they have a longtime tech partner called Delta Electronics. They're going to try to co-develop next generation charging architecture. Great. I mean, when you hear all the different things that they say can do, you'll say, wow, that's pretty impressive. I'll also say that it's another case where we had unusual option activity. In this case, call buying. They were stepping in here buying calls, Pete. And again, Pete and I emphasize this, Pete, every day on 3 at 3. I say, you know what, folks? I buy at the monies and I sell above the market. I don't buy the way out of the money. You know, if the stock's $7 and they're buying the 10s, great. But I like buying the 7 calls, not the 30%, 35% above the market kind of thing. But this was a very good announcement by them, Pete. And again, once again, our people that followed into this trade, I think they're pretty happy today.
I think they're pretty happy, and they had a nice big jump. It also shows you how you've got to be on top of things too, John. You've got to have the ability to be able to react. This is a stock that jumped all the way up close to $8 a share. It was a really nice jump to the upside, but you better have been quick and you better have been a part of it, because then it pulled back just a little bit. Now, was that some of the shorts that were trying to defend a short position? Maybe. There's 26% short interest in this stock, and maybe they felt like, well, this is kind of a one-time, one-and-done type thing, and they needed to pull back again. Whatever the case, but it did pull back fairly substantially after that big move up towards 8. So you've got to be on top of these things as well. I'll tell you what, John, it's a great part of the markets right now. We talk about the EV space all the time, but it's a lot of it has to do with, are there enough battery chargers out there? Are they efficient enough? We all talk about that. For instance, if you were down in Florida and you were trying to get somewhere and you couldn't get to one of those, John, I mean, not only do you have to worry about, is gas going to be in the pumps? That's a worry for sure, and a very legitimate one. But how about the energy source as well? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this whole thing. This is a really amazing company. I think they do an unbelievable job with what they're doing on the efficiency side of things, the cost-saving side of things. I like all of that, but you've better be on top of it. This is a great example of why you've got to be in front of the markets when you're participating. Just remember, you're putting money to work, but you've got to work as well. So this is one where if you missed it on this jump, you might not see it at that level again for a while.
Well, and just in very quick order here, folks, doing this deal with Delta, they're claiming that they're going to be able to do dynamic power sharing, meaning that with one station, they could have 6 different charging stalls. That would be a first. I don't know of anybody else doing that. Also, some people look at any of these EV plays after the last disastrous year for many of these charging stocks, and they say, I don't know if I want to touch them. On big dips, it rallied up, like Pete said, to 8 today. It traded back down into the mid-6s. I think as it trades back down, it gives you an opportunity. Would I buy it up there at the 52-week high that it hit today? No. I would take profits up there. That's easy to say in hindsight, but I would have taken profits up there. And as far as going forward, I think charging stations, as Pete said, are going to be vital to expanding EV usage across the country. Mm-hmm. All right, Pete, let's hit the NFL. What do you got for sports into the weekend?
Well, I think it's a very interesting weekend as we get closer to it, John, and we're almost there. But I wanted to give some of the top games of this weekend. And I think it's kind of fun to look at, all right, well, what are some of the biggest games? Well, I think the 49ers, a team that everybody predicted in the NFC was going to be probably going to the Super Bowl again. They're 2-3 right now, and they're within their own division. They've got to go up to Seattle, and Geno's played pretty well at quarterback there. Actually, Brock has played very nice quarterback for the 49ers, but they've lacked a defense at the 49ers so far this year, and that's been one of the problems. If they go up to Seattle, John, what if they lose that game? They're 2-4. They're going to have to be really scrappy to get themselves back online and be able to be somewhere closer to being a playoff team again. Then you've got a game with the Commanders, the Washington Commanders. Unbelievable how well they've played already, but now they play a real defense in the Ravens. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. King James, the King will run for as many yards as he wants to run because he's that good, John. And it's going to be really, really interesting. Jaden Daniels at quarterback. He runs, he throws, he kind of does it all. And then Bo Nix maybe has found his stride as well for the Denver Broncos. They're playing the Chargers. So a lot of interdivisional games going on, some of them not, but I think it makes it pretty interesting. There's one team that I'll say this. This is a must-win weekend, and we're only 5 weeks into it. Cincinnati Bengals. They're 1-4. Joe Burrow's probably having the best year that he's started out having. He doesn't have the interceptions that he's had in the past, but daggone it, John, they're in with Baltimore. They're in with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's done pretty well so far, and they're in with the Browns, who are terrible. But that's a tough division with Baltimore and Pitt both playing really, really well right now. makes you kind of wonder, is Cincinnati in trouble if they go to 1-5? I'm going to say yeah.
Yeah, they are in trouble if they go 1-5, Pete. You're absolutely right. It would be a miracle if they came back from that. I'll throw one out, Pete, that the Buccaneers at Saints.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a very interesting game. It's a Sunday game. I think that's going to be an interesting game because there are two quarterbacks there that a lot of people, Baker Mayfield and Carr, a lot of people, even though these guys have gotten good contracts in the recent past, a lot of people passed on these guys. Not Carr as much, of course, as Baker. I can't believe they got rid of Baker, Pete. Now it's been a couple years, but do you think Cleveland wishes they had Baker Mayfield instead of Deshaun Jackson?
Yeah, and as we talked about, that's one of the problems when you look around and you look at what the Browns are doing at 1-4, and they've got a quarterback. They're making a change, John. They have to make a change. They are going to make a change, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't even know for sure if Derek Carr is going to be healthy enough for that game. I'm not positive about that, but that's something to keep an eye on as well. By the way, on the college front, how about this, John? What was the Big 8, then it was the Big 12, and then it became the SEC and some of the biggest of the big. You've got Texas playing against Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl. Now, that's going to be one heck of a football game. I'm excited for it, but I will say this. As a betting man, which I am a little bit, because I feel like I have some skills on that side of things, I'm going to tell you right now, Texas looks pretty damn good, and Oklahoma, I don't know if they found their stride yet. I don't know about the quarterback, if he's good enough to play against the Texas team that we've seen go up to Ann Arbor and beat up on Michigan, and just basically looks like the number one team, which they are, in all of football right now. I think that's going to be a heck of a game. There's the Ohio State game against Oregon, John. This is another one of these interesting ones where the portal has helped these schools lift themselves right back up to where they were with the previous quarterbacks. But when you look at some of the quarterback play from Will Howard, who was at K-State and did a great job, but now at Ohio State, his numbers are off the charts. And then you look at Dylan Gabriel. He's at Oregon now from Oklahoma. His numbers are off the charts. They're going to be playing in Oregon. That's going to be a heck of a game. By the way, Dylan Gabriel, John, is in his 6th year of college. He played a few years at Central Florida. He played a few years at Oklahoma, and now here he is up in Oregon. I mean, some of these guys are absolutely like Bo Nix. It's unbelievable how long they play college football, but they're doing it. There's one last game that could be pretty great. How about Ole Miss and LSU? Now, that one near and dear to you down there in New Orleans, but that could be something that could be special. Now, I know they don't play in New Orleans, but I'll tell you what, the Cajun gumbo is going to be flowing, and that's going to be a heck of a game down there.
Yeah, I would say you asked about the NFL and must-win, Pete. It's not a must-win, but if you're Oregon, you've got to close out Ohio State at home.
Yep.
There's no excuse. If you lost at Ohio State in a close game, people could still give you the benefit of the doubt. Ohio State going in there with, again, the biggest NIL payload or payroll in college football. They go in there, looking an awful lot like an NFL team. They go in there, and if they come out with a win, I'm not predicting it right now, Pete, but if they come out with a win, I think Oregon's chances diminish greatly because that's their home game. But let's not forget, Phil Knight, chairman, the founder of Nike, is really behind that team 100%. So he is not exactly shy about dishing out the cash either. So I think this is going to be a pretty interesting clash. And again, it's like an NFL franchise. Both these two schools are, Pete. Yeah. So I think that'll be an interesting game to watch. I'm very excited for that one, in fact.
Yeah, Dan Lanning has done an unbelievable job at Oregon, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun to watch. But I'll tell you, I'll go out on a limb and say this. I don't know if there's going to be an undefeated team by the end of the year based upon what happened last week and what could happen even this week. I think some of these undefeateds are going to go down. Texas is the one that stands out, but they still got to go through the SEC, John. That's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. But again, Clint, or what is his name? Clint Ewers, Pete, for Texas?
Not Clint, but I can't
Clint
recall his
or
first
something?
name. But
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry for butchering your name, Mr. Ewers, but that kid is a hell of a player, and he is allegedly back for the game, Pete, against Oklahoma. What is that? The Red River something or other, Pete, isn't it?
Yeah, I love all these rivalries that are out there, and they're still out there. That's the good thing. Even though they've changed sports a lot, there's a lot of rivalries that are still going to be there, and some of them are important. They just got to be there. Oklahoma and Texas is definitely one of those.
Folks, at the market close tonight, we're going to be talking about superstorms and trading superstorms. We're going to be looking at the stocks. If you scan that QR code there, thank you, John Farrow. If you scan that QR code, folks, you'll be able to join us. We've got J.C. Peretz. We've got Brigadier General Anthony Tata. We've got Charlie Gasparino. We've got our team. And we're going to be giving you a breakdown of the best opportunities because of what's out there. Now, we're not profiting from somebody else's pain, folks. What we're doing here is trying to focus you, as well as how we've focused on what is out there in terms of Generac, GNRC, as Pete would say. Generac, do you want to buy it? Or is it too late to buy Generac because they provide, of course, instant power for residences and some buildings. Caterpillar, of course, a much bigger supplier for big buildings, but Generac for retail and so forth, retail customers, much more popular. And the prices are a lot less than a Caterpillar generator. But is it still okay to buy them, or do you not want to buy them because the prices run up too much? Well, we're going to answer those questions for you. Same thing about home builders, same thing about insurance and all that. So if you want to know, join us. Go to marketrebellion.com/register, or just go back to that slide. There you go. And scan that QR code, and you can be joining us at 4 p.m. Eastern time tonight, right at the market close. And we will also send everybody who joins us or is unable to join us but registered, we'll send you a copy of the presentation. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it, and then you'll get inside of traders' heads to see how traders are looking at the markets. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. Pete and I are taking the day off for travel tomorrow, and we'll see you on Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern time.